My name is Alexis Ford, and this is my presentation, Righting the Wrongs, Conscious Editing, and Reparative Description. Language, culture, and society shift throughout time. However, there are structures, biases, and practices that have been implemented that cause harm or misrepresent marginalized and oppressed communities. Archivists have a role in deciding the materials that are collected, preserved, and made accessible. This work can feed into the dominant narrative and power dynamic that excludes and attempts to dehumanize underrepresented groups. Reparative description is a way to mitigate this issue, and it has been discussed by archivists for some time. The Society of American Archivists defines reparative description as remediation of practice or data that exclude, silence, harm, or mischaracterize marginalized people in the data created or used by archivists to identify or characterize archival resources. Conscious editing is a technique available to archivists for accomplishing this remediation. The University of North Carolina Chapel Hill's Wilson Special Collections Library began its reparative description efforts with the Southern Historical Collection. This collection was established in 1930, and it is the main manuscript collection that includes ledgers, diaries, and other financial documents from white families in the American South. Jackie Dean and other members of the Special Collections Technical Department were up for the task of repairing the terms used for the records at the collection level. Dean reported, "The early work of the Southern Historical Collection, like that of most early state archives in the Southeast, glorified the experiences of white antebellum Southerners and obscured or ignored the lives of enslaved people. The language found in the finding aids prioritized white Southerners and reduced their roles in slavery and to the oppression of Black people." The technical department set out to alter these descriptions and began using the term conscious editing. This term is a reference to the Conscious Style Guide, which is a website that collects style guides and articles covering terminology from marginalized communities. The abstracts and the finding aids for creators in the collection will provide biographical information on the person, but race was only mentioned if the subject was non-white. A decision was made to include racial identity for all people. The department centered race because it is a recognition that racial identity is especially significant for the collections and context at UNC Chapel Hill, and this is an example of the legacy description and the revision for Thomas Francis Price from 2017. Even so, a processing note was added for transparency's sake. Donors or creators in the future would be able to self-identify, and archivists use contextual information in the materials to determine identity for previous finding aids. This note is included in every finding aid for individuals or families. While working on these descriptions, the Technical Services archivists realized more work had to be done to address and repair the lack of care and consideration for marginalized groups in their records. The Cameron Family Papers was the most glaring example. The legacy descriptions for these papers were created in the 1980s and predominantly focuses on the white family members. There is extensive information about each person in the family, even the daughter's favorite governess. There is also a mention of the family owning land and slaves in the abstract, but it does not acknowledge the papers that provide details about the enslaved people. This collection includes lists of enslaved people, deeds, indentures, and grants documenting the transfer of enslaved people, the bills of sale and appraisals, and the daybooks reflecting purchases by enslaved people. Before conscious editing efforts at the university by the archivists, these people were still seen as property. After the initial work in 2017, the University Library's Conscious Editing Steering Committee, or CESC, was founded in the summer of 2019. This group assembled and edited a comprehensive guide to expand on the previous labor done by their colleagues. The 168-page document creates guidelines for contextualizing collection descriptions to decenter whiteness and to center the voices of the silenced, marginalized, and unheard. The final version was completed in 2022, and the document is accessible to the public. Some of the funding for this committee came from the UNC University Library's IDEA Action Grant. which is a pilot funding program that encourages researchers to develop novel ideas that address important problems or roadblocks to a current line of inquiry. The application for this grant is open to researchers in any field at UNC Chapel Hill. As a predominantly white institution in the American South, the university libraries recognize there are changes that need to be made, but nothing would affect the physical materials. A declaration in the beginning of the guide regarding this matter reads, "No modification of the collection materials is part of this work. Only updates to the catalog records and finding aids that describe the materials for researchers to discover and access." Wilson Special Collections Library's Guide to Conscious Editing outlined the term as an ethos of care employed in the development, composition, and ongoing refinement of text and non-textual presentations of information. The vision of this ethos is in these 3 bullet points on this slide. Also, there are values included in this section of the document, and the values are ethic of care/people first, accessibility, honesty and transparency, and equity. The primary benefit of conscious editing and reparative description is improved searches in an archives collection and increased accessibility among researchers. The University of South Florida used conscious editing as a tool to alter the terms they used in their records to help researchers discover them better after they were moved around from different folders and locations. In a case study detailing their results, archivists at the university reported a comprehensive review, including conscious editing, provided a path for improving terms by allowing the team to review the context of the items, including any materials written on the backs of photos or any accompanying documents that may not have been reviewed when first scanned. The authors also reported an increase in accessibility for their oral history and walking tours collections due to detailed and expanded metadata. A major challenge for institutions in their use of conscious editing and reparative description is time. Most repositories go through records that have already been processed. In Luke and Ms. Zoda's study, 63% of the galleries, libraries, archives, and museums they interviewed stated that time was their biggest barrier to the success of their reparative work. Time is also affected by the number of staff available in the institution's workflow. Alexandra de Graffin-Reed presents the struggle between speed and efficiency and ensuring the use of reparative practices. The author declares, "A fast-paced, high-level relationship with minimally processed collections risks a limited understanding of collections content, which may include perspectives that are overlooked, undescribed, and therefore undiscoverable to potential researchers." She also argues that while the more product, less process and golden minimum method reduce the backlogs an archive may have, slow archives allow institutions to slow down and implement ethical and caring procedures. Kimberly Kristen and Jane Anderson's idea of slow archives asserts slowing down creates a necessary space for emphasizing how knowledge is produced, circulated, contextualized, and exchanged through a series of relationships. Slowing down also permits archivists the opportunity to consider ways to establish policies and workflow procedures that favor conscious editing in every step of the process. Implementing conscious editing into the catalog records and finding aids of a collection comes with varying obstacles, but the end goal is worth it. Alexandra de Graffin-Reed concludes, moving forward, they must create ethical and inclusive description that considers and prioritizes the preference and self-identifications of creators and communities to build a more representative repository. Reparative description work through conscious editing is a thoughtful, slow process that provides for richer, non-exclusionary collections. The CESC at UNC Chapel Hill prompts archivists to remember that our goal is not to achieve perfect solutions, but rather to engage in the continuous process of learning, critical self-reflection, and growth. It is not a linear process, but a valuable one. And here are my references. Thank you.